What's going on, guys, and welcome back. Happy October. It's spooky season, and tonight we've got Elsa Bloodstone as the new season pass card to kick off the month. We're going to be breaking her down and all the combos, and is she worth going after? We're also going to be breaking down all of the new October cards in Man-Thing, Black Knight, Nico, Minoru, and Werewolf by Night. How they're going to fit into Marvel Snap, their combos, the decks we see them in, and which ones are going to be worth going after. And as tradition calls, we're going to be talking about cards on the rise heading into October and the new season. Which of your old cards are going to get a heck of a lot better? We're going to be talking about all that today and more on this episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I am joined by Mr. Alex Kocha. Alex, happy spooky season. Happy October. How are we doing, man? We had ourselves the Infinity Week, Mobius Week, OTA. What's going on?
There's a lot going on, actually, Cozy. It's been a wild week of Marvel Snap. I mean, Mobius has had a tremendous impact on the meta. Can't wait to talk about it on the podcast. And generally speaking, like, it has been a completely different experience playing Marvel Snap this past week. And that's what happens when you release a really notable tech card that completely shakes things up. So, I mean, with the new cards coming out, it's a spooky time to be a Marvel Snap player.
Yeah, the OTA was nothing crazy, right? We had like a lot of nerfs. We had, two buffs that were pretty much like they were just worthless. But we have ourselves the content patch coming out on Tuesday, which is what I think is going to bring a lot of the buffs. The nerfs definitely affected some of the meta in a way in some of the decks and how they were played. And Infinity Conquest, I kind of saw like it's a lot of high evo out there right now. Obviously, Loki has its presence. And then there's like droplets of other little archetypes, if you will. And I think this season is going to kind of highlight those archetypes and not the ones that are already doing good.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the cool things that they've been doing really well with Snap is like the months seem to be targeting specific types of archetypes and giving key pieces to archetypes that needed some love, right? And we've talked about that in the past where, you know, like for instance, Ghost Spider was essential for move even potentially being relevant, right? We had like seasons where you have like Phoenix Force would try to bring new archetypes up, but then it just nothing really happens. It kind of just fizzles, right? But I do think that Secondar's doing a good job of introducing key cards to key archetypes to make the game exciting. Because I mean, hey, listen, some cards have maybe come in a little too hot, but but at times it has been exciting.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with news of the week, right? Because we're going to jump into the subjects. But number one, if you don't know by now, new releases are finally not happening, which I don't know why this took so long. I think it took longer than it should have. But new releases will now be kind of midday instead of at what is my time, 8 p.m. California time. It's coming out noon California. So they're rolling it, back 8 hours? Or would it be forward 8 hours or whatever?
All I know is that it's not 11 p.m. my time, which is what it was when I was like streaming and stuff like that. I'm like, hey, I'm going to bed at 4:30 a.m. today. Like, it's like, you know, but I like to change. But I think the key thing here is that now they have staff ready and available when, like, say, a Kitty Pride problem happens or there's a bug and they need to be reactive. Because there's times where, like, hey, it's a live service game, right? Yep. Game dev is hard. There's going to be times where they need those people in shop to like fix a problem on release. And when it was 11 p.m. at night, like people got to sleep too, right? So I think that this is really good from the live service component of the game. So I think it's a great change.
Yeah, so this season is going to be the typical time. It's going to be coming out when you guys watch this about 14 hours-ish from when this is launched. However, I think it'll be biggest for the next season pass. Like having season start like in the daytime is really cool, number one. But number two, I think the data on new cards are going to get even more accurate. So like, me and you testing till 4 a.m. some of these cards that are coming out, like the pool of players we're going up against and or like just the regular Snap data is not really like efficient. I don't know. It's going to be a lot better, I think, overall. But dude, we've got ourselves the lengthy podcast of breaking down the October season. Are you an October guy? Like, do you like spooky
I like
season?
October. I like fall. I think we've talked about me liking leaves before.
Well, the leaves.
That's come up before.
Do you like the man thing in the middle here? Do you like are you a scary movie guy?
No, I'm not a scary movie guy, not at all. I'm definitely like a Disney, like I literally watch Disney movies with my kids. Like one of my favorites, Moana. I watch that very often. That's the kind of movie I like. There's this one scene where like there's this like it's almost like the water kind of splits and this turtle goes across. Anybody in the comment section knows it's like so beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful scenes in all of movies.
Have you seen,
I could watch that over and over again.
Have you seen Pixar's The Exorcist before? Check it out. It's by Pixar. Yeah.
By Pixar, the Pixar Exorcist. I mean, I've heard of the Exorcist. Is that when like when Mickey Mouse is hanging against the ceiling and being like scraped across the ceiling?
Yeah. Go ahead and just type in the Exorcist and just watch it. I swear it's by Pixar. You're going to love it. This season, I feel like, is going to have a lot of cards and characters that, like, people don't know. And so, you know, we're going to be breaking all of those down here on this side today. But what are we talking about on your side of the channel and the Snapchat?
One of my favorite topics is going to be our discussion about our final rankings for September cards. I mean, we try to be predictive with how we think those cards are going to shake up in the meta, and now we get to look back and see just how right and wrong we were. We'll also be talking about the October Spotlight caches, which I think is a very important conversation, because if you want to be utilizing your resources effectively, you're going to want to make sure you listen in on what your best caches are going to be. And then finally, we're going to talk about series drops, a wish list and discussion. Yeah, that's going to be a little irksome for some, but yeah, we're going to be discussing series drops, where they are, where we hope they'll be, and perhaps what might just drop if it happens.
Let's go to break down the card coming out tonight, the new season pass card in Elsa. And believe it or not, I think there's way more to break down than I first kind of thought. Elsa is a very cool card. She's got a lot of interactions, and I think she's going to be pretty important in Snap. So we're going to rate her and her usefulness in Snap, combos, cards, things like that, and just break her down altogether. Now, if you don't know what she does, guys, she's a 2/2, and she's going to have the ability. It's not ongoing. They had that in the trailer. If you play another card to fill a location, you're going to give it +3 power, Alex. Initial impressions.
The way that I looked at this when I first saw this card is, I'm like, we know Glenn's at the helm, okay? We know that season pass cards try to be innovative. Like, even if you think about Nimrod coming in a little weak and Phoenix Force, which you've somehow already brought up twice now, like, those are at least innovative cards. Elsa is exactly that. And I think that this card is probably going to be stronger than maybe first impressions might give it. And I think it's also really interesting that it's not the card itself that gets massive. It's not Dakin that's like, look at me get jacked, right?
Yeah.
It's Elsa just spreading the love. Yeah. Like a good old quarterback, and let's say Tom Brady, just spreading the love to different receivers for those touchdown passes. That's exactly what Elsa's going to be doing, spreading the love.
Dude, yeah, she's going to be in contention with Arrow over there as a card I love too. Elsa's just a cool character altogether. So, yeah, she kind of reminds me of like Nebula season pass card. Like, I think that she's not going to be like transcendent as far as like, hey, she's a cool balance. She's different than what we've seen before. And I think she's going to be really good. So we're going to break down kind of the cards that we see fitting with her. And I want to start, first of all, with that ability. Now, this is important to know. It's going to be very late in its activation. Essentially, I think he described it kind of like Hawkeye. So great example to kick us off, just so we know, Alex, what we're talking about here, and the viewers and the listeners know, is essentially if you play Shuri down, right, and then you fill that with a vision, the vision is not going to get Elsa's bonus and then get doubled. It's going to double, then get Elsa's bonus. So, like, that's important context, I think, for the how she's going to work. She needs to be active, so she needs to be on the board to see it, and she can be played same turn. So those are the little interactions that matter, obviously, a ton. Like, for instance, just to start, like, Lady Deathstrike, I don't think is going to work here, where you would give her that power, and then she destroys everything. I'm pretty sure it'll be coming after the fact. So that's something to know before we head into card synergy. Alex, we've got a lot of decks right now. I would say a good chunk of them that like to fake fill paths and locations. And there's kind of a couple areas where I see her being really useful. But to start out, man, listen, a 2/5, even though she's not a 2/5, but theoretically she's putting out 2/5 value. I mean, we praise those all day, and the fact that that can get to 2/8, 2/11, and then some, there's no doubt about it. Elsa's going to be a good card.
My man counting by threes. Yeah, it's going to be powerful, right? And it's like one of those situations where I like the idea that Elsa itself, you're going to see it on the board turn 2, and you're like, that card's going to be a problem for me. But it's not that card. It's every other card that comes after. And so, like, does it dodge Shang-Chi effectively? Because what are you going to be buffing that's going to go above 9 power, right? So, like, you're going to be able to do this, like, new Zoo style, like, power fluctuation where, like, Shang-Chi's not going to be able to do much. Obviously, there's going to be room for Shadow King, which is notable in as a 2-drop now. But I like Elsa Bloodstone. I think we need to start with the most obvious synergy that I think people are really going to target. We talk about Kitty Pryde, and she probably took a stray bullet because of Elsa Bloodstone coming out. So
definitely.
I think we have to start the discussion here.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Sometimes I feel like Secondary needs to release information before they release the information. Like there was no reason why the Kitty nerf should have happened without maybe the trailer coming out so that people knew, oh, that is why Kitty Pryde went down to power points. Yeah, so this is the obvious one for sure. I think this is the one that people are going to look to. We already have like competitive, or was competitive, kind of the Shuri Kitty Pryde Taskmaster decks. I think that's going to be kind of back in action again. +3 on Kitty Pryde that could just keep on filling the lane. That's good, man. It's really good.
It's really, really good. It's super good. You got to nerf this preemptively good. Naturally, of course, it's going to depend on draw. But Kitty Pryde benefits so many other cards, right? Like if you have Angela sitting underneath, like you're not only getting the +3 on Kitty Pryde, you're getting the +2 on Angela. So you got that like boom, boom, boom. There is so much being generated here, right? But it does take Kitty Pryde out of a lot of other decks, right? But naturally, and here's the thing though, Kitty Pryde was released to pretty much everyone that was playing actively at the time. So this is going to be an immediate synergy between the Season Pass card and a card that's, although Series 5, going to be in most people's hands. So I think a lot of people are going to be able to participate in this meta, and I think the meta share is going to be really crazy, which kind of makes me nervous about like what Twitter's going to look like when Elsa Bloodstone comes out. But Kitty Pryde is definitely a winner here because, I mean, the synergy is unmistakable.
What does Kitty Pryde do best? Well, she's a fake lane filler, right? So that's essentially the cards that are going to be good with Elsa out the bat are ones that are filling the lane, but they're not, right? You have more ways to abuse the mechanic. It is tough at times to fill all the lanes. Not every deck wants Elsa, but I would say a good majority are going to want to benefit. And these Kitty Pryde decks, we already know how to take the most advantage of them as well. So we're going to continue to be able to do that. Now, what's scary is you talked about the cards that go along with, like the Angela is a great example. But more so than that, even in the Shuri deck, you've got the little packages that we discovered as a community recently, right? So first of all, obviously, to a lot of y'all's mind, are going to be the ones that can fake fill lanes. So Nightcrawler, a great example here, right? Jeff, another good example. Silk. These are cards that have been in that little movement package that are fantastic. And this is truly now a package that's going to be ran across the board because now you're getting Kraven synergy. You're getting 2/5 value in Silk. You're getting Angela. You're getting Elsa. There's a lot coming together, and even, dude, having a 1/5 Nightcrawler, a 2/6 Jeff, just a 2/6 Jeff is something, I gotta tell you. And now keep in mind, guys, they have to be played into the lane. So, Alex, you can't move a card like Nightcrawler into a lane to fill it, and he gets a bonus. It has to be played in there, right? Like Ultron is not gonna work. Dr. Doom, unless you play the Doom on the filling location, but the bots won't get it. So that's important to know. But don't you think these little moving cards, right? Vision. I mean, getting that cap, it's going to be big.
Yeah, well, Vision's huge. Cap Marvel's huge too because that extra +3 does a lot for something like Cap Marvel. But like even like small things like Ghost Spider, because I mean it's like, oh, Alex, Ghost Spider doesn't really. Well, if you fill a location, right, Ghost Spider can pull the card out, and then you can play into it again, right? So if you're not playing the Kitty Pryde style package and you're just trying to get a little value, or even if you are playing Kitty Pryde, didn't draw it, you know, you could create additional space with something like a Ghost Spider. But the ones that I've been really thinking about, Cozy, and call me crazy, I've been playing a little bit of like, you know, Shauna, right? Cards that like fill the lane, and like those cards are played, are they not? They are, because they proc their on reveal effects. So those cards are played. So would they not benefit from the Elsa effect if you fill the locations with Shauna?
Yeah, Shauna's one of those weird ones in cards, and it's always mind-boggling.
No one plays her either, so it's like no one's quite
the
sure.
info is bleak on her. What does she even do to 3? What is it?
3/2.
Dude, it's ridiculous.
I'm sorry, I took you off guard there.
No, you're good. On reveal, add a random card. That's the thing. Saying add is what my problem is, because Squirrel Girl is not going to work. I know that for certain, right? So it's like, and I forgot they made her at 1/2, and she's add. So I don't think they'll add. I think she just gets the benefit of on reveal. We'll have to see. However, that
Mysterio should.
Mysterio will, because he's actually playing. But doesn't he say add an illusion? So maybe I'm just... As you play. No, so it does
play
say
illusions.
Okay,
so the language is kind of important here.
Yeah, it is.
I think Mysterio's one of the key winners here. I like that you brought it up because Mysterio is going, like, if you bast Mysterio, like, and then it gets the +3 across the board, like that's better than Doctor Doom.
Doctor freaking,
like,
it's
right. Cracked. It's insane.
Yeah, dude. No, that's a great point. There's definitely new deck design, and we're going to see it like we do all the time in a new season. It's the same old decks, and they get a little bit better with Elsa. And then like then you start getting the creativity hats on, right? And that's when you start to see the decks that we just alluded to, these kind of different, easy to fill lanes, and Mysterio in general is just easy. It's easy to get that out across the board. A couple more cards that are kind of like, wasn't maybe thinking about that all the way, and I kind of really like this one, dude. I love Hulkbuster in this scenario. So Hulkbuster is another fake fill, and one of the more fun ones at that, dude, because if you have the like a Jeff or whatever down, or any card for that matter, and then you fake fill it, I think the Hulkbuster, it depends on the activation, but regardless, either the Hulkbuster or the card he attaches to would get 3 more power, dude. That's insane.
This is the intricacies of this game, right? Like, you really need to get this card in your hand and test all this stuff, right? Yep. I like this call. I actually had not considered Hulkbuster.
Cool.
When you started scrolling to 3-5, I thought you were going to talk about a card I want to talk about too, but Hulkbuster was a good call. Hulkbuster's kind of relevant again, eh? Especially with these Kitty Pryde decks. And I think people are getting accustomed to like, oh wait, I can play Hulkbuster with Kitty Pryde and then like benefit from that in a very significant way. So even the nerfed Kitty Pryde, Hulkbuster, Bloodstone, all these things are going to add up to a very strong 1-drop in Kitty Pryde. Yeah,
oh, for sure, man. And again, it's like Hulkbuster has synergy with other cards so well, but then he also can he's just 3/5's good stats, right? So I'm sure you were going to mention this lad right here.
Absolutely. What an absolute chat this is going to be. A Spider-Man being able to basically just pop in the location, get the buff, and just jump right out to create space for the next card. This was the one I went to right away, because like I'm like, man, this card is going to be so good. It's already good.
Yeah, I love it.
It's already a great card, and like I kind of feel like it's eaten Polaris's lunch a little bit.
I just like his ability so much more. It's so much more useful.
It is. It's super useful. And we've talked about it in the past, even in ways you might not expect, like when you're storming a location and you don't have your jug and you have Spider-Man and they play a card and you pull it out anyway and still trade the location, right? I love the synergy with Elsa though, because it's like you're getting it and your opponent is being disrupted still. And they don't, like, you're messing up their play. You're pulling their Angela out of the lane. You're pulling their whatever out of the lane. Armor out of the lane so you could Shang-Chi something later. Like, I'm often finding incredible uses for Spider-Man to kind of just mess up the board state of the opponent, because everyone plays cards in a very specific way. Oh, you're playing Nebula there because you think I can't play there very often. Well, let's move Nebula over here where I can play on you all game long, right? Spider-Man, I think, has been a very silent high performer, and it works perfectly with Elsa Bloodstone.
Yeah, so, you know, looking at Elsa, Alex, I would say the reason she's just a banger of a season pass card is that we have a lot of season passes aimed to make one archetype better, or it's kind of archetype. The season is around an archetype. You would look at Loki and you're like, oh, he's pretty plug and playable, but no, he kind of made his own archetype, right? So like, yeah, he was accessible to a lot of people that want that playstyle. Elsa's benefit is that she is going to work across most of the decks that you already enjoy playing as a player, right? Like if you like Tox, whatever it is, she's going to give use to said deck in some capacity, right? This is a great example of that. Now, these are the cards that move out of the way. These are the faux lane fillers, if you will. Here's some other cards that I thought, I like the synergy. First of all, and probably most, like, it's a tight deck, but I think it can work. Let's talk Destroy. Now, this is obviously a archetype that can fill a lane, and it doesn't matter, right? No big deal. No skin off their nose. Deadpool is one that I like as playing him as the last in a lane, killmongering him, and then you double up that 3 power pretty easily. Imagine playing Forge into that, right? So you have a couple turns just really cooking, and you have a Deadpool now with easy +3 power that you can continue to abuse. Kind of exciting there. Another great example is what, obviously, Carnage or Venom. They destroy the lane, and then they build up. The Bucky Barnes play just got better somehow. Kind of cool with Destroy.
It is really interesting with Destroy, specifically with the Venom. I like the call on Venom there, because anytime Venom's getting additional value, like that generates value for Null. It generates value for Zola. It generates like Venom is just such a great card. And you're right, you often stack like that lane with three cards ready to pop, right? And X23 is ever present. It's bouncing around all the time. It's never off the board. Yeah, I like the call with Destroy, Cozy. I think you're thinking here.
My biggest, like, you're thinking too much, but you're thinking, this is by far, here it is. This is my stretch of the season. Negasonic.
Okay, this is a stretch already.
This is a stretch, yeah. We're in the tinfoil hat. Negasonic, and then you fill the location with Nimrod. What do you think?
Like it.
Isn't that kind of
That's
cheeky?
pretty spicy.
Kind of spicy, dude. So you,
But are
you
we
spread
sure
'em.
that it won't blow up before it gets +3?
Dude, that's why we gotta test it. Probably, it probably will blow up before, and then nothing gets the +3, and that's actually a terrible play. But that's why I come to the Snapchat with these hot takes that I know are probably garbage, but I like thinking of every possible thing. So,
Dude, are you kidding me? That's like what you just came up with is brilliant. I love that. I would never have thought Negasonic into Nimrod trying to get the play. Like, that's awesome. I love that. Even if it doesn't work because the code won't allow it. It's a brilliant idea, Cozy. Pat on the back.
well, let me hit you with one more then. This is my last, like, okay, hold on. This is a card I really like as well. In a deck archetype that it doesn't really work. I like it's fun when it happens, but like you can't take it into Infinity Conquest because it's not consistent enough. I know that I think it was like June. You had a big Invisible Woman kick, right? Like you were playing her a ton, a lot of decks. If you guys haven't already, really cool interaction is Invisible Woman followed by, and I've done this so many times now, by Taskmaster. This is a really cool interaction because essentially the last card you played on turn 6, Taskmaster's going to copy. What I think is interesting or cool is if we go to 5-6 power, we sort by power, we go from top to bottom. Now you've got some cool cards. Obviously, can't look at all of them. But I like the idea of even just the extra sizzle, right? On some of these big cards, you can't do it on Orca. I get it on the lanes you can't do it on. But the fact of just getting a 15 Magneto in one lane and a 15 in the Taskmaster in the other lane, to me, the Taskmaster synergy, it's there. It does exist, and I'm excited about it.
It is. And also, like, conversely, if someone's playing Magneto against you, or you're playing against someone who has also Bloodstone, and you pull 4 units into a location, they won't get buffed because they've not been played there, right? So it's this card mechanically, I think, is really complex, and like I want to see it play out. I want to see this because I do think it's going to be strong. Like, I think this is going to be a good card. Like, your early impressions, right? I know we like to do the star thing. What are your early impressions star-wise?
Yeah, we got to do it with each card, right? So the fact that she's going to work even with like Space Throne and things like that, like they've already figured that out, which I love. I honestly, man, I might be a little high on this, but I'm thinking definitely 4-star. I feel solid about a 4-star card. She's not the winner in the deck, but she enables other decks in general. If 4 to 4.5, I'm going to go 4, but I think 4.5 is not off the table as far as just like a 2-drop with its value. I don't know why that's not there to your Shang-Chi point, to the synergy point.
I was going to say 4. I lean towards 4. I can see this being a pretty impactful card. And in particular for like these mid-range style decks where like you're generating a lot of value with these smaller pieces that are highly mobile, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be bounce, move, destroy. Those are the ones that I think are going to be the initial like winners.
I have something to say, and I almost don't want to bring it up.
Say it.
I almost don't want to bring it up. Elsa Bloodstone, 2-drop. We've always had meta-defining 2-drops, Zabu being one of them, where you want it out on 2. Is this a Chavez in every deck situation?
No, that's.
And I don't want to bring it up, but after our kind of heated conversation last week, I got to think, I was like, maybe Cozy's right. Maybe I'm the unreasonable one here. So I'm bringing this up on my own volition. I know I'm setting myself up here. But is this a situation where it is demonstratingly obvious that perhaps Chavez has to be in every single deck, and that's a problem?
So, for me at least, 2-drops are interesting because typically they can be played on like 5 or 4, whatever. You know what I mean? Like they can complement it, and because what you're doing is a late game play on some of the decks, I think it's fine. But on the ones that we've alluded to with the Jeff and the Nightcrawler, and you want to get those bonuses as quick as possible, and it's mid-range, yes, Chavez. And I want to say the comment section was like, I can't believe you hate. And then I did another deck like a couple days later that had Chavez, and people were even more livid. I like Chavez. I think she's a good card. I guess my point was that this is exactly why, right? Like this is exactly why Chavez would be interesting, not here anymore, because this is a very good point to bring up, Alex. I like that you brought that up, because do you just want it Elsa on 2? I think it depends on the deck, yeah?
Yeah, but I like you. I don't think you'll ever be upset with Elsa on 2. I don't think it's Zabu though. Zabu, if like not getting Zabu on 2 feels awful, right? I still think that what you said is correct. If you have like Elsa and you play the Elsa on 4, you can still vision on 5. You can still do things, right? There are still things you can do. And actually, you do want it early, right?
Yeah.
But it's just, it kind of propped into my mind. I was like, is this going to be a situation where I realize just how wrong I am?
Well, listen, man, I loved it. I love the conversation. It's important to bring up every point, right? And either way, I think Elsa, we can both say, is probably pretty damn good. All season pass cards are pretty good, but I like the flexibility, the plug and play ability, and she's going to bring some new enjoyment to, I think, a meta game that needs it.
Absolutely. The metagame, I think a lot of people have been a little upset with lately. And I think that Elsa is going to bring another tool that has a completely different playstyle, right? It's kind of like, I was just going to say Phoenix Force again. This is a record now. But Phoenix Force brought a whole new archetype to the table, a whole new playstyle. And I think that was refreshing, even if the deck was terrible, right? Even if it sucked, it was refreshing to play something new. And Loki did that too. Let's not forget, Loki was a very refreshing new way to play. It was just too good, and everyone played it, and the counter in Mobius was 4 weeks away, right? So for Elsa Bloodstone, I think it is a new approach to Marvel Snap, and it gives a little love to Move too, which is nice. And I think you mentioned it last week that Move needed some indirect love, and here we are.
Yeah, so it's like, I think this is the final point on here for me, is that Jeff is one of the most played cards in Snap, if not like top 5 most played. Nightcrawler's getting played a lot more. Angela's played. These cards, this movement package is what I opened up with, is already played. And so the reason why she's going to be so in the meta is that like a 2-6 Jeff over your 2-3 Jeff wins every time. And a 2-6 Jeff is actually scary. I'm like, what are we going to see with that, right? Obviously combined with Kitty and stuff. She's a get card because of that. I think the movement package, already really, really good, is going to be even better. And that's why I have her as just great. She works with good cards already, right? Spider-Man, we just talked about it. So definitely, guys, look out for Elsa drops later tonight. Our next card, Alex, is in between us here. And I know your Disney-loving ass doesn't like scary. But Man-Thing is actually a hero. It's complex, but he is definitely one of the more fearsome-looking Snap cards that we've had, and will be our first new one. I think he's Series 4, and I think he's the only Series 4 of the month. Which, dude, I'm all about. I just did a Toxic guide. Fell in love with the archetype again. Remembered why I loved it. You're playing with fire with Toxic, but it can compete with just about anything out there. Guys, if you don't know, and if you want to know what he does, Man-Thing is a 4/5 that he has an ongoing effect of 1, 2, and 3 cards. Cost cards have -2 power. That's both on your side and on the opponent's. Alex, first impressions of Man-Thing.
My first impressions is I like this card. And how do I say this? I don't know if it's going to be as meta relevant as I want it to be, but I do like it. I see myself playing this card. I like it a lot. For me, I'm like, I lean towards like it being a higher star card, but what brings it back down is the prevalence of High Evo. High Evo brings with it Luke Cage, and Luke Cage obviously is going to have a very negative impact on this card. However, you, my friend, just released an absolutely fantastic Toxic base deck. This card loves that. Loves it. It loves Debris. It loves the Goblins. It loves all that stuff. It loves Viper. It loves Hood being kicked over. It benefits from everything. And if someone does not have Luke Cage, it's snap and GG. Like, it's just over. This thing is a lot of power, especially with your capabilities of putting things on the other side. So I like it. I think it's better than I think it's getting credit for, but I do see its downside depending on what the meta situation is when it comes out.
I mean, a 4/13 is hilarious, right? Like, that's just obviously like the most busted stat lines. The thing is like, you have Toxic decks, and then you've got like these like negative pushing decks, and you have, you know, disrupt decks. They all have different names. After playing the archetype a ton through Infinity Conquest, really learning the ins and outs of why you want to play it and what it does well, a couple things I see working with synergy. First of all, Luke Cage exists. Absolutely, guys. You're going to have one on your side, but also with these negative style decks, you want to run your own Luke Cage. Well, then you run your Lizard. Well, if you're running Lizard, you can run Enchantress to kill your own Lizard, and now you have a way to then go against their own Luke Cage, and that's like a massive turn 6 play, I would assume. If you play an Enchantress to kill what they thought was a protected Man-Thing lane, and all of a sudden you have a flip of 8 power in that lane, that's a winnable lane, right? That's absolutely massive. And even getting like a Mystique to copy this is kind of silly. Like, there's some kind of weird things, and you do have to be reliant on your Luke Cage. But this punishes cards out there right now, Alex. And we're going to talk about the decks that, or really the deck, but the main things that I see working with them. But can we just first talk about a card that has been meta relevant now since, I would say, since December, this has been a very good card. That this is, I believe, designed to just completely nuke down and target. And that, my friend, is going to be Brood. I think Brood's going to have a tough time moving forward with Man-Thing. He just obliterates this card, man, and cards like this.
He does. He completely destroys it. And the thing about it is Brood comes out on 3, right? Man-Thing comes out on 4 and completely just dismantles it. And it's what exactly Brood needed. Like, this is, didn't we just talk about Brood being the 10th best cube gaining card in Marvel Snap?
Yeah.
That was a surprise to me. But then when you said, I'm like, of course it's Brood.
Yeah.
Brood. but yeah, Brood has always been a tremendously powerful card. It's with Surfer, with Iron Lad, with everything else. I like the call. The thing that concerns me is that there's a couple things about Man-Thing that are kind of tricky.
Okay.
It's one of the few ongoing cards where you can't naturally counter it with Rogue, for instance. So Rogue's not really an answer, because if you don't have Luke Cage, like, well, what the hell are you even doing, right? Like, you're basically just flipping the effect and just still debuffing yourself anyways. So I think that Enchantress is going to be the answer. However, smart players will quickly identify that you're not going to put your Luke Cage into the location with Man-Thing, right? Because if you do, sorry. No, I'm the opposite way. You want to put your Luke Cage countering into the same location as the Man-Thing, because if they play the Enchantress, they knock both effects off.
Yeah.
So now Luke Cage and Enchantress have this interesting dance where it's like, okay, if I want to turn off their Luke Cage, I'm also going to turn off my Man-Thing. I think the tech side of this card is where the drawdown comes. I think it's way more counterable than others. But at the same time, like you talked about before, like a 413 or whatever, like that is a disgusting stat line.
A 413, and like the card I compare him to the most by far, and one that honestly, dude, I fell back in love with so hard, man. I loved her again. Spider-Woman is so good. I admit it. We talked about her as the most slept card, like, I don't know, months ago, and I still think she's there. She's under Shang-Chi's zone. She can be, with the 12 power swing is insane because she has a -4 potential. And then she can't be Shang-Chi, which I just said before. Man-Thing is the same thing to me, right? It's this card that pushes out way more than it's worth, but you don't have to fear where it goes. And I honestly think once you have Man-Thing into this toxic deck, the one that I just put out, it's not missing a lot of pieces. You have to be aggressive with that deck, and that's why it loses, right? And like anytime you're giving fire to the player base, like the win rate's going to be bad. Like you've got to know that. I honestly say ignore the stats on this one, to be honest. Like, it's just not that important. You have to do Green Goblins early. You got to try to guess some things. It's kind of cool, though, because once you start to compound all this stuff, right? Like a card that worked with the toxic package that I was falling in love with, especially played behind Nebula, was Mojo, right? Nebula enforces him to fill it. I think Mojo's a really cool counter we didn't talk about to Elsa Bloodstone, because you know they want to flood this stuff out. This is going to continue to work itself into the meta. I think Toxic will have its best month yet under Man-Thing.
Oh, I agree. And then the next month, you get another card, which we'll talk about on another podcast, which might even be crazier for Toxic and Disruption and, all that kind of stuff. So I don't even know how to say it. I think it's a Nihilus. Is it a Nihilus? Is that how you say it? I'm not sure. We know what card we're talking about.
I think we always look at these cards and we're like, well, Luke Cage. It's like, dude, people are still already not playing Mobius, and it's like an obvious card that you should be playing. People roll the dice. They like to not put the tech cards because tech card isn't interesting, right? Like it's this. You see this in a lot of card games, like Pokemon. People don't put training cards all the time because they're not Pokemon. Like, I get it. But I do think Luke Cage, he'll have a swing, Man-Thing week. That sounds fantastic. Demonetized. When Man-Thing comes out, you can see a lot of Luke Cage. Then it's going to dip in play rate, and it's going to continue to be kind of where it is now, the toxic archetype, but better. Yeah,
it's kind of funny because I feel like every single time a new card comes out, it's better like 2 weeks after it comes out, when people like fall off of the counter a little bit. Honestly, for me, like my notes here says like it hampers Ultron play. I mean, Ultron can't really do its thing as effectively, right? So I think Patriot low-key gets hit here because Patriot has a zoo effect, right? We often forget about Patriot being like a zoo-based deck.
Yeah.
You have Sinisters, you have Broods, you have Ultrons. And so, like, Man-Thing says, like, no, like, all that sucks now. And that deck is not going to run Enchantress. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of deck that gets too tight. It won't run the tech that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I could squeeze Luke Cage in. It could squeeze it in.
Yeah, dude, and the fact of like the Hood got himself a little bit of a nerf in an OTA, and we're like, oh my god, and it did kill his play rate a lot, which I think it should have. I actually like Hood as a toxic card more than a catch-all card. I think it's a good placement for him. But the fact that he's a mini Green Goblin, right? You send that over with Viper, which feels fantastic. You're essentially sending over a -5 card with Man-Thing on the board, and you can play. So the way you play Viper, right, is if you have Sentry in your hand, you can hold on to that. And if you have Hood and you have Viper, you might as well just do the 1/2 and get the huge swing play. Having Man-Thing followed by that is so much negative power. And this can also go in the same lane that Green Goblin's going to be in. That is a lost lane. There is no coming back from that lane once you popped a Hood and a Green Goblin and Man-Thing. It's over for that lane. Even if they do a Luke Cage, who cares, man? They still got the negative card. So, you know, I keep going down the toxic archetype, but Debris, right? These cards that are going to, they've been good, but they're going to continue to get better with something that can capitalize, right? Instead of just a hazmat on these rocks and we have a toxic rain, it's like, no, now you have another way to follow up, you know, this toxic archetype, which it's desperately needed.
It has desperately needed it. Because, like, I feel like toxic has been always this, like, I'm going to play Hazmat, Wong, and Absorbing Man, and all the other cards don't matter. And it's just this turn 6 crazy miracle. But no, like, it's always been this, like, 40% win rate, high roll. I'm going to make a YouTube short style deck, right? Yeah. And then I think Man-Thing does give it a some legitimacy. Yeah. So I'm actually really excited about this card. Stars. Star estimates. What are you feeling?
So after all this talk, right? After all this talk, I'm going to say a 3-star still for now. I'm going to give it a 3-star rating just because it does have that direct counter. Probably 3.5 though. Honestly, 3.5. I'm settling on that.
I've leaned towards 3 as well. The reason for this is because obviously it has this initiative dance as well. It's something we didn't touch on. Like initiative, obviously you're going to be getting initiative very commonly when playing Man-Thing, but that might not always be what you want depending on what's going on, right? Like a toxic deck with Hazmat does not want initiative because you want to hit everything as they play it, right? So that's a bit of a factor worth considering. I lean towards 3. In my heart, this card speaks to me as a 4, like in terms of what I'm interested in.
For sure.
But I don't think it's that strong. I think the counterplay is too obvious and is too meta relevant that this is going to be 3, possibly even towards 2, as long as high evo is like a large sustaining chunk of the meta.
But just even having the fact of the negative pushing lanes can get so bad to where you can have a Lyth in the deck, which is working in toxic, and you're ahead by way more on your lane you're winning because it's so much negative power, and then you just a Lyth a lane to win, right? Like that does exist, I think, in this world of Man-Thing. He's a tough one to place. I do, value-wise, Series 4, I think is great. I think he's fantastic for that. But these are only Series 4 drop for this one. So, yep, that's going to be our ranking on him. Next up, and this is a big season. We got a lot of we got a lot of cards coming out, Alex.
It's a 5-week season, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think the last one comes out like on Halloween, which thematically is fantastic. This next one, I think, will be our shortest conversation. It's a card that adds to really just one archetype, kind of like Man-Thing. It's going to be the Black Knight, who's a 1/2, and after you discard it, you're going to get the Ebony Blade with the power, after you discard a card, sorry, you're going to get the Ebony Blade with the power of the card that you discarded once per game. So Black Knight has to be on the board, and then you go ahead and get that card. Alex, like initial thoughts, rundowns on Black Knight.
My initial thoughts is I think this is going to be trickier to play than like it first meets the eye because like you don't want to just discard a swarm. Right? Like, you don't want to just discard a swarm, right? So I was thinking about that, and I was like, hey, what do you really want to discard then with Calling Wing? That gets you enough power that the Ebony Blade's worth it. And I'm like, okay, do you discard Ebony Maw? Right? Ebony Maw hit with the Calling Wing. That's a pretty good line. It's a 1/7. And plus, if you Hela or whatever, that's a pretty good card to fall down on turn 6, right? So I was thinking about, like, okay, what do we actually want to discard? Like, what is it with Ebony Blade? If you're playing something like a Calling Wing, then yeah, like an Ebony Maw maybe, right? But even, do you really want Ebony Maw in your deck? Then I was thinking, I was like, okay, you still have Lady Sif who just got buffed. Death is an 8 cost, right? So that's a very consistent line. But I'm not quite sure of this answer. If you discard Apocalypse, does the Ebony Blade take on the value of the discarded Apocalypse? Like on the moment of the discard. Do we know that yet?
I think it's similar to Dracula, which is what I would assume. And this is where I see... in short, I think Black Knight is going to add a new flavor that's better than what Silver Surfer did because it's not messing your own thing up. To discard, it's not going to be... I don't think it's going to be Hela. I think it's going to be kind of another option potentially if you have Black Knight out to MODOK. If you don't discard anything else and you play MODOK, you have this card that can come out. I don't know if it's going to add to Apocalypse. What's interesting too about him, right, is if you play him down, you're calling Wing. If you have this Ebony Blade, you could also end up discarding that accidentally. Like, there's some weird interactions with how he's going to work. Without question, right, we can just say, I think firmly, he's going to make some really cool, powerful play lines. And this is like the combo card, right? If you get the combos that you need, you win the game, right? The Infinite 420 play, it's ridiculous. The Ghost Rider to follow, ridiculous.
But it's kind of unfortunate for something like MODOK. Will it just take the value of whatever's left in, like, the leftmost card in your hand, the first card that gets discarded with MODOK?
Yeah.
So is this a shadow nerf to MODOK? Like, it's not reliable. So MODOK's the most reliable discard card, but if you have Black Knight, MODOK is suddenly not reliable. And Apocalypse will always bounce to the right of your hand. So in practice, I wonder about how good this card is. This is my lowest card. This is the card where I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know about this one.
So, I go against these decks, man, with Blade now, where it's like, it feels like no matter what they're getting rid of, it's good. It's like, oh, it's Swarm. Oh, there's Magneto. There's Infinite. I know it's coming. I think it's going to be good. I think it's good for the people that play discard. Because it's Series 5, I think you should avoid it for the most part unless you're all in on discard. I do think it's going to find its slot in these decks, in these new age era of these dependable discard decks that I think are really slept on. They're not talked about right now enough, because you've got these cards like, man, I could go on and on about Hela, how I think she's just a pure value card now. She's so good. He's going to work in a lot of instances. He's definitely going to boost up Ghost Rider. Obviously, this is like those are the obvious synergies that's going to work. But he's going to still continue to add to what is discard all about, right? Kind of just like, it's a dance. If you get your combos, it's crazy. I think there's definitely great play lines with him. He's a little bit one-dimensional, if you will, which is why I don't love it. I still think he's a 2.5 star.
Really? I lean more towards 2. Because I feel like discard really benefits from the consistent line of MODOK. However, if Chavez gets changed, then discard changes completely. And I wonder, this crossed my mind. I wonder if Black Knight comes out and Chavez gets discarded. Chavez gets nerfed or changed. Like, I wonder if the new wave of discard comes in with Black Knight and Chavez being changed.
But I guess the reason why I think he's going to be a 3, like why I'm not just going to crap on the card, is that it's like, he's a 1-drop. So like, yeah, you have Blade, but sometimes you got to be careful with when you play. So you're not getting the Ebony Blade as soon as you play the Black Knight. It's when you discard a card. So at worst, he's a 1-2, which is not good stats these days. But at worst, you're just kind of waiting around to see what a good 4-drop value is going to be, which is kind of what discard is anyway these days, right? Like, you can have Black Cat now, which means you have 2 4-drops that you can play. Maybe Zabu, we'll see. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not for a archetype that kind of needs a 1-drop. He's just going to work in there, I would assume, with a lot of upside.
The one deck I kind of wondered about him in, I was like, okay, because I was kind of low on this card, and I was like, okay, does Hela Tribunal really benefit from this? Because you're not really playing anything on one anyway, under most circumstances. Like, there's a couple different ways to play Tribunal. Hela Tribunal is one of them. It's the most RNG-centric one. But if you straight up just discard like a Magneto, an Infinite, or like any of those big boys that you're hitting, then Ebony Blade's there. The problem is now you're running Iron Man. You're running all these other hits that you don't want for your Black Knight. So I don't know. It's like discard has been leaning towards this reliable discard, right? And you brought up Silver Samurai prior, and Silver Samurai does not work well with Black Knight because it's discarding the opposite of what Black Knight wants, right? So all these reliable pieces are moving, like, they're kind of acting against it. Lady Sif's the only one I really see. MODOK doesn't work for it. So Silver Samurai doesn't work for it. Calling Wing is kind of awkward with it. That's kind of where my head's at. That's why I feel lower on Black Knight.
Unless you make a deck that's just like a big time numbers, right? And then it's like, then Silver Samurai, like, yeah, he's getting rid of a 7 out of 12, but it's like, okay, it's whatever. Whatever, right? Like, obviously you want it around a 9 power to get at least that's best cost for 4 cost card that you're playing down, right? So Obviously, Mobius hurts this deck with Zabu, but yeah, overall, for value, I'd say skip the week, right? What do you say?
I also agree, skip the week. I don't think it's not worth a Series 5 token drop for sure.
No, not at all. And we'll talk about the spotlights on your week. I don't think it's worth it. And again, I think people will look at it as being too positive. I think it works in the archetype like Man-Thing does. And that's as a one drop, I don't know. I think it just kind of works together. Next up, dude, the next season card that we have to talk about. And, this is one where this could be, okay, hear me out. I'm going to already give my star rating to start it off, okay? This could be a 1.5 star card, Alex, or this very well could be, which I don't think it will, but it could be the next Legion. Truly the next Legion. It's Nico. Now, Runaway fans, you guys will know Nico Minoru. If you don't know, she's a one-drop on reveal. After you play your next card, cast a spell. We do know that those spells go in order. The spells changes each turn. We've seen it played on the trailer. Very random. We're going to bring up the spells in a second. Alex, right? Like, don't you think it's going to be either, like, god-awful or the flexibility it brings makes it slept on, and all of a sudden you have a great way to get things cooking?
What you said, I'm so glad you said it first. I have a ton of notes for this card, and all of them just have question marks beside them, because like it is, we say it all the time. We need to play this card to really understand it, and I think this is like the one of the month. That's like, okay, this card really needs to be tested before you can say too much about it. I don't know. I agree with your assessment. It's like a 1 or a 5, and probably nowhere in the middle. The thing that has kind of got me thinking it's probably going to be on the lower side, and I like to be wrong, but it feels like the original Snow Guard, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, remember how you used to, the bear and the hawk used to change? And you're like, man, like, I kind of could use that hawk right now, but it's the stupid bear, right? Or like that unreliability of that. That's what it feels like.
We've seen these cards not perform. When they're trying to be a jack of all trades, or like they have like a bunch of things they can do, they're not good at one thing, and the game only has 12 cards, and those 12 cards have to do something and serve the purpose in your deck, right? So that's the biggest argument for her. She's way too random, which is why some of these other cards that we thought would be good aren't good, because it's just it does too much and not enough. What she has going for her, she's a one-drop. That's the biggest thing going for her. Snow Guard was a one-drop, but you had to play other things, whereas you get to cast a spell with the card. You don't have to play more energy. Like Snow Guard was so bad because of that. She's very general in her application. I think that's a very good. I think if I'm calling it, she'll be terrible in ladder, but pretty good in conquest. That's my, like, if I were to like sum it up, like that's probably my thought. And there's a couple of cards I think she works well with. I am low on her for now, but she could be Legion. All of a sudden, these people crapping on her, they're gonna love her, and say that. I think it'll be the hot take to say she's gonna be good, because she has, I guess, the potential. I just don't fully see it, Alex. I think it helps like taking a look at her spells, and for those watching here, you can see them all on screen, but we'll go through them quickly. Just take a listen. We're going to go from spell 1 to spell 7. The first spell on reveal, after you play your next card, it becomes a demon, which would obviously be a 1/6. All of these are on reveal cards, guys. After you play your next card, destroy it and draw 2 cards. After you play your next card, move it to a location to the right, so kind of the opposite of Iron Fist. After you play your next card, give it +2 power. A little worse than Elsa. Playing your next card, you can replace the card's location. A little Scarlet Witch stuff going on. After you play your next card, it's a mini Moon Girl. Add a copy of it to your hand. And then finally, after you play your next card, you're going to double Nico to a 1/4. So again, Alex, all of these are very kind of situational. In the right decks, they will have their uses. I'm going to just say it now. I think the 2 decks, if you will, that are going to work best with Nico, and this is truly, we got to just wait and see, is going to be, wait for it, the 5th time mentioned on the podcast, Phoenix Force. Phoenix Force. Yeah, so Phoenix Force has a lot of synergy with these cards that we just read off, right? So that, maybe. Also, man, play your next card, it becomes a demon. I was like, wait a second. Brood, Mr. Sinister. What happens there? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they would all just become. So there's some cool interactions. Again, I think this is a grade A, 5-star fun card. Probably not going to be the best. And then lastly, I think Thanos, man. I think Thanos will love this card because it has a lot of cards that can take effect to this, and it doesn't matter. Like, destroy a stone, who cares? You get to draw 2 cards, right?
I agree. Thanos is a good call there. And I think Thanos needed something. That change to the Soul Stone. It's hard to believe that small change it took like 2% off the win rate of the deck.
Oh, I know.
Off the archetype. It's crazy, right? You said something pretty interesting, and I want to kind of touch on it, okay? So in my head, when I was evaluating this card, I was thinking, you know what? This is a cool card, but when you have 12 cards, I think one thing that Marvel Snap does really well, and although this might be a hot take, but I think Marvel Snap has very fair RNG for the most part.
Yeah.
You have some location RNG, which can be absolutely tilting, but in terms of actual card RNG, I think it's pretty well managed here. Nico takes it to a whole other level. And when you're playing a 12 card deck, I think the best decks are the ones that are often the most consistent. Like if you think about what High Evolutionary is, we think about what Shuri is. These are not fancy RNG decks. These are very consistent, straightforward play pattern decks that just perform. Nico throws it all out the window. But you said that you think that it's going to be better on is it better on in Conquest, terrible on Ladder, or the other way around? I'd like for you to expand on that, because that was a really interesting thing, and like I was like, what did he mean by that? So I'd like to go back to that.
So I'm pretty sure these spells don't go in order. Like it's not the same set order, and sometimes if you build your deck around Nico, you can really find ways to kind of make her work successfully. Like let's just say Brood's Absorbing Man deck. Absorbing Man's a cool card with Nico, because he can take advantage of the double spells. I don't know. I don't even know what that looks like, right? But you have Brood, you have Sinister in that deck already, and maybe on one, game, you lose 2 cubes, 1 cube, it doesn't look good. The next game, you play Nico, and on 2 or 3, you have Brood or Sinister, and you've got the Demon spell up. You snap, the opponent think your deck sucks, and all of a sudden you have 18 power in the lane because you have 3 demons from a Brood. Those are where it's the variance, right? You get to change locations, destroy cards, and draw. I think a deck can be designed to make her decent, but you're right. Chavez is consistent. Like these cards are consistent, and that's what does well. But in Ladder, dude, you get play Nico down, you get your spells. They probably, they might suck, and then you lose, right? Or it's over. You don't get to play on emotions. You don't get to play on consistency. You have to play on consistency.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the Agent Coulson effect. The reason why you were so high on Agent Coulson when it first came out with Conquest. It's like that variability that your opponent can't really predict or deal with. Okay, I got you. All right, that makes a lot of sense. You almost give me a little more like spirited thoughts about this card. I was way down. A little bit more hope for this one, and I think if the spell effects are super cool, I'll be in.
There's some, I mean, it's got potential. I think we're gonna have our own subject for her at some point because she's just so intricate. But definitely fun. Definitely a fun card. Now it's a long podcast, but we got to talk about our next card, Werewolf by Night, Alex. Now, I do want to start out by saying this was Glenn 100% on purpose. Every card's stats were shown in the trailer, but Werewolf by Night, which I thought was hilarious because I think this card has the most potential. Elsa seems probably like the card, right? But this one is it could be game breaking that they're not even ready to get the stats out to the public yet, right? It is a 3/3 at the moment. I think it'll keep its 3 cost. After you play an on-reveal card at another location, move there, and gain +2 power. Is Werewolf by Night. Yo, that's insane.
I love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be good. Like this for me is like a pretty confident 4-star for me.
4. That's what
if it's bad, I'll be totally surprised. If this is a bad card, I'll be like, man, really? How was this bad? I think the on-reveal part of it is kind of an interesting inclusion because it kind of does restrict how the card is utilized and the kind of decks that it can work with. But at the same time, I mean, just one movement, it's a 3/5. 2 movements, it's a 3/7. And what do you got to do for Maximus to get that done, right? And I mean, nothing. It just feeds your opponent's hand, but that's a whole other conversation. But what I'm trying to say is I do think that this card's really good. And I like that it's a move card that's going off of on reveal because there's the obvious cards, right? Like Heimdall, for instance. But as a whole, I think it opens up some really interesting opportunities for a bit of like a synergistic approach between move and on reveal.
Yeah, both archetypes that are, I would say, in contention of the most diversity in love, right? Both of those need the love. Obviously, this works with Elsa as a card that you can play and get it out of the lane. 2 reveals, and you have yourself a Maximus. Okay, that's all I need to know. Now, you do need the space. You need the space to be able to do this. However, if Elsa's in play too, works perfect because then all of a sudden now you're like, yeah, you need the space, but if you fill out a location, it's not as big of a deal because you're adding a little bit of extra oomph to that. I also love, this is the ultimate dodging of Shang-Chi card. It's perfect. It's a 3/7. If it becomes a 3/9, like, good luck guessing where I'm going to play. It's a tough card, I think, to go up against, and it has a lot of potential. Silver Surfer. Thanos, another great Thanos card. My God, man, the On-Reveal Stones is perfect. Absolutely perfect for this card, man. You know, you play like a deck that wants to play a lot of cards down and then maybe use Killmonger. You get rid of all those. Like, he could fit in like a Destroy Thanos build even, because you have all these on-reveals going on, and then you just kill them all with Killmonger, make the space for him. He's got way more to him than I think people give him credit for, and with Bounce, he seems insane. He's got a lot of cool uses.
It's funny you brought up Silver Surfer, because that was like one of the primary lists that I was like kind of pen and penciling, kind of like, okay, how do I make this card work in an interesting way? And it's as simple as, like, you often almost, I don't want to say you want to lose, or you intend to lose the Silver Surfer lane sometimes. Like, you got Brood and like you're building up the other location. Silver Surfer is often the last card you play, and it's sometimes being thrown into the location that you don't have the most power in. But with Werewolf by Night, you get the Werewolf sliding over. You've already activated it a couple times, perhaps. It slides on over. It gets the +2 by Silver Surfer, +2 for its movement, and suddenly you actually have a better chance of going vertical in that Silver Surfer location. I actually really like it. I think it's pretty cool. And I don't want to just say, oh, Silver Surfer because it's a 3-drop, because like that's what we always default to anytime there's a 3-drop, and 2 drops for Zabu and stuff, 4 drops with Zabu, sorry. But like, I actually see synergy there. So yeah. I think you're right to call that out, because it makes perfect sense. It's an on-reveal card played on turn 6, last card of the game, and it comes sliding over.
Yeah, and not to mention, dude, Elsa, the Elsa synergy, it's already working. So I think Bounce, the movement package, is so busted with this card, it feels like now, because Kraven is like, you're getting all these, you know, +2s all over the board. There's a lot of archetypes that Werewolf is going to work in, and we have to wait till the end of the month to even get our hands, as he comes out, I think, on October 31st. But definitely 4-star, I think we said, for both of us here. No question about it, man. So that's the new cards. That's a lot of new cards this month. It was kind of a sleeper banger month. May not be cards that people know, the characters, but definitely is, like we said to start off, going to hype up a lot of cards that we need the love, if you will. We have cards on the rise. We kind of do this as tradition. Cards, we just talked about the new cards, right? Which ones are going to be rising up that are already in your collection? And I'm going to read off a little list that I gathered here, and I want you to kind of tell me it's that one right there. Like, that's the one that's going to pop off, right? So on my list here, I've got Shadow King, definitely, with all these fake faux stats, right? I mean, my God, Shadow King is going to be awesome. Luke Cage, we've got Beast getting himself a nice little rise. Mojo to combat the Elsa. Debris to go with Man-Thing and a few other cards that we've talked about. Phoenix Force, Ghost Rider, and Ghost Spider. Which ones do you like?
I like Debris. On that list, for me, I think Debris is like, has the biggest delta from like card that's okay to a card that's going to actually slap potentially, specifically with Man-Thing. I think that disruption-based decks and taking away board space for opponents as Destroy drops in meta kind of share, which is happening. We're actually seeing Destroy drop down, and naturally you don't want to play just Debris into Destroy. So Debris is a huge winner in my books. Like what do you think there? Like, on your list, like, would you say that Debris is a big winner?
I like Debris also because if Elsa rises up to crazy potential and then Man-Thing comes out and Toxic is, I'm telling you, Toxic is already good. All of a sudden you have Debris that, like, oh, they were going to fill that Elsa lane with a card, and you pop a rock in there, like, it's going to piss him off. Debris I like a lot. Shadow King I think is the winner even more so. He continues to be that with the Kitty Pryde deck. I think, without question, Shadow King is going to really rise up on this month in particular. Maybe Thanos, possibly as a riser. Maybe not a winner, but as a full riser. But yeah, I would say probably my winner, the biggest card with the upgrade will be Shadow King. And then just Toxic, the archetype, with Mojo probably being up there.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny you bring up Kitty Pryde, but that's going to be a riser too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it was already rising before, then it got nerfed, and the decks got destroyed. The Kitty Pryde-based decks, like Kitty Pryde and Angela, was like, well, this package sucks now. Got taken out of a lot of the lists, and it's going to come back. So Kitty's going to have 1 week of irrelevance and then come back flying into the meta. People are going to be upset about Kitty again next week, but it's okay. It's only been a week, so it's It's expected.
Though, yeah, right. Exactly. 1 week off, and then you can get right back to your shenanigans. Guys, appreciate you guys checking out the Snapchat and Insane October spooky season, and hopefully you guys enjoyed today's episode. We're going to be talking about the spotlights that coexist with these new cards over on Alex's, and I think that's going to be really important to know if you truly should get something like Man-Thing or Black Knight. So we'll be talking about that over on Alex's side of the channel. Good luck out there in the new season, guys, and as always, happy snapping.